Hey guys, this is your review for Common Assessment 6 for tomorrow. So the first question is about the quotient of a fraction of 1/4 divided by 6. So because we have a fraction and we need to divide it by a whole number, if you remember what we talked about in class, when you divide a fraction by a whole number, you're going to end up with a fraction. So that right there tells you that it's not going to be answer choice A or C, since they're not fractions, they're whole numbers. Now, if we draw a model so we can prove our answer between B or D, is we're going to draw first the model of 1/4. So if we take one whole and we take 8 and divide it by 4, you divide it by 4 parts, you shade one of those in, that's 1/4. What the question is saying now is that you have to divide it by 6. So you would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. That gives you 6 sections. So the question is, what is the result? Well, the result is going to be this little bitty square right here on the top, the little rectangle. Each little piece, how big is that compared to the whole? So that little piece is going to be one piece out of how many total? Well, this is comparing to the whole entire whole, which means that these little lines have to be extended over as if we had the whole entire thing. And if you can count them, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So it's one piece out of 24. And that's how answer choice B is the correct answer. Alrighty, so my answer is 1/24. Remember, if you start with a fraction, you end with a fraction. Now, let's see, the algorithm that we talked about in class was if you have the denominator of 4, all you got to do is multiply by the whole number. 4 times 6, that gives you 24. But you have to remember that you end with a fraction. Okay, if you start with a fraction, you end with a fraction. Now, number 2, what is the value of this expression? We went over this in class during the review game, so I'm going to talk to you again. I'm going to talk through the problem again to you so that you can see what we were talking about. First, this is an order of operations problem, so we need to remember the strategy that we talked in class. The please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and multiplication and division for my dear. They are done in order from left to right. Same thing for addition and subtraction. So if you have a problem like this, notice that you have these things right there, that parentheses that separates the 2 and the 5. That, if you remember what we talked about in class plenty of times, is that this is another way to write the multiplication. So that's multiplication, but that is inside of these red parentheses that I just highlighted for you in red. So we have a multiplication inside the parentheses, and we also have an addition inside. So between multiplication and addition, we can see where the addition is in the order of operations. It's all the way at the bottom, and multiplication is a little higher up, which means you have to do the multiplication first. So in that case, you would multiply 2 times 5, and that would give you 10. Copy everything else down. And then one of the things I want to talk to you about is that 3.5. Be careful with that one, because some people think or thought in class that 3.5 was the same thing as 3 times 5. If you're going to look at the dot to see if it means multiplication or if it's an actual decimal point, you have to look where the placement is of that decimal. So let's say you have a 3 and the dot in the bottom and then the 5 like this. That's a decimal point. The difference between that and the multiplication symbol is going to be 3, and then the dot is going to be big, bold, and is right in the middle of the 3 and the 5 like this. I'm trying to figure, there it is. It's going to be something like that. So 3.5 and 3 times 5 is not equal to each other. So please don't make that mistake of thinking that that decimal is a time symbol. It is only a time symbol if it's big like this one and it's in the middle of the two numbers, not down at the bottom. Okay, let's go back to the problem. So you have 3.5 plus 10 inside the parentheses. So because you still have those parentheses there, you have to make sure that you do that first. 3.5 plus 10. Everything inside the parentheses goes first. And as you can see, you have a 3.5 and a 10 inside that you have to add. So 10 is a whole number. Remember to put decimal first of the whole number. Put the whole number in front of the decimal, and then you can fill in a 0 so that those decimal points are lined up correctly. If you do that correctly, you'll end up with a 5, decimal 3, and a 1, which is 13.5. or 13 and 5/10. So there's my answer for the inside of the parentheses, but I still have a number 2 on the outside. Now notice that there's nothing there between the 2 and the 13.5. So the parentheses are now there, the square brackets, the square parentheses, they're now there to signify multiplication once again, just like the one on the top. So 2 parentheses 13.5 just means 2 times 13.5. So if you do that correctly over here on the side, remember that we forget about the decimal until the very end of our product, of the answer. Then we can come back and do the bubble strategy. So I'm just going to multiply as if they were whole numbers. 2 times 5 is 10. There's my 0, carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And 2 times 1 is 2. Now I can go ahead and put my bubble strategy on there. My first bubble is going to have a 1 in it, since there's only one digit behind the decimal, which is a 5. The second number, the second factor, the 2, it has no decimals placement, so that's going to be a 0. Now if I put the two bubbles together, I end up with 1, which means I only need one number in my product behind the decimal. So my decimal has to be between the 7 and the 0, which gives me the answer of 27.0. And if you look at the answer choices, the only one that is worth the same thing as 27.0 is answer choice C, because it's 27 as well. And that's it. Number 3, there are 12 rows of students on the bus. So let's talk about that first. If you know what rows are, there's these lines right there, right? So that's it. That's what that means, 12 rows of students. Each row has 2 students seated in it. So I'm going to put 2 students inside each one of those rows. Just I'm doing this so you can understand what I'm talking about. You may have to do this, you may not have to do this. So there's 2 in each row, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. And all the way to the bottom, there's 2 students in each row. Okay. The next thing that I have to talk about is the next sentence. There are also 15 students who are standing on the bus. And the question is, which equation shows how to find S, the number of students on the bus? The total number of students, it should say. So if I have 15 standing students, I'm going to draw them over here on the side. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll do the other 5 on the other side. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So now I have 15 students standing on the side. Done. Now this stuff that I drew in the bottom first and then in the middle, that's 2 students in every row for 12 rows, right? So I could add 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Whew, that's a lot of repeated addition. We have something called multiplication. So instead of adding 2 plus 2 plus 2 12 times, I just multiply the number 12 times 2, or 2 times 12, whichever way you want to do it. Then I still have to take care of these other guys that are standing, so I need to put them inside of my total. So I need to add them together. I need to bring them in. So if I put them together, that means addition, and I'm going to add those 15. Let's see, 15, not 5. There you go. So if you notice, answer choice A is does have a 15 on there, but it's multiplying by 15, and we don't want to do that, so we know answer choice A is wrong. If we look at B, we do have 12 times 2, just like we have, and then we did add the 15, so that one seems to be okay. Now let's look at answer choice C. You do have multiplication of 2 times 12, just like what we said. But if you look at these things right there, well, actually, let's make it a little note right there. That means multiplication. These little things right there, those parentheses, that forces you to add first. Remember the order of operations that we just did? So parentheses has to be done first. So if you add 15 plus 2, that's adding 15 students plus 2 students. That means you have 17 students in each row. So that wouldn't work because that's a lot of students. You have 17 students in each row, and you have 12 rows. That's going to be a crazy amount of students inside that bus. So there's definitely not going to be the right answer for that one. And then if you look at answer choice D, D has 2 plus signs, which means you're just adding the 12 rows plus the 15 students plus 2 more students. You cannot add rows and students and students. What are you going to have? Rows, student rows? That doesn't make sense. So D doesn't make sense because it's just addition and you're adding different things. You're not just adding all the students. So the only answer that makes sense was answer choice B. So that's going to be my answer. Number 4, what are the coordinates of the point where the x and the y axis intersect on the coordinate plane? Well, if you remember, the word intersect means that they meet, that they cross, that they match there, okay? So here's my x-axis, Here's my y-axis. The point where they meet is called the origin. If you remember what we did in class about Foxy the Fox, that's his house, that's where he lives, right? So the point 0, 0 is where he lives because he doesn't need to walk anywhere and he doesn't need to go up in the elevator any places, any units. So that means that the point 0, 0 would be the origin. That's the point where the x and the y-axis intersect. That's the easy one. You have to remember that. It's kind of like a vocabulary word type question. Number 5, Ms. de Beaumont is creating a coordinate plane and she wants to place her office at the point 7, 4. So what steps would she take to place her office there? And you have a whole bunch of steps on the answer choices. Let's look at this first. The ordered pair, remember, Foxy the Fox tells you that you have to do the x then the y, right? So if you look at Foxy the Fox, the x-axis, the x-coordinate, has a 7 in it, which means you're going to move 7 steps to the right. But look at all the answer choices. Answer choice A says you start at point 7. Does that where Foxy the Fox always started? No, he started at his house in his little cave, which is at the origin. So that means that answer choice A cannot be the right answer because it's not starting at the origin. B, C, and D, they all start at the origin, so those could be possible answers. Now let's talk about the way that we write Foxy. If you remember how we wrote Foxy in the board, we talked about Foxy having the x and the y, just like the ordered pair x coordinate and the y coordinate, how they are ordered. So the x has to go first. We have to move first on the x-axis, then the y. So because the x-axis, the x-coordinate is a 7 on the ordered pair, that means we have to move 7 units. So the first answer choice is already gone. I'm going to take that off. But now we're looking at B, and B says you move 4 units to the right. C says you move 7 units to the right. And D says you move 4 units up. So obviously it's not going to be answer choice D because we're not moving up. And we're definitely not moving 4 units. The first number is a 7. So that's why we can also cross out letter B. Even though it is the correct direction, it is going to the right, it's the wrong amount of steps. So that means that we're only left with the right answer, which is move 7 units to the right. And because the y coordinate is a 4, that means that now Foxy the Fox has to say, Foxy! Remember the jazz hands. And then the elevator appears, and then he can write the elevator 4 units up. So that would be the correct answer for number 5. You can also draw a little drawing. There's your x-axis. You can label it. Your y-axis is there. Remember, Foxy the Fox starts at the origin, and then he would walk 7 units to the right and go 4 units up. So that's where the point would be. So there you go. And number 6 says the graph shows 3 of the 4 vertices in square ABCD. I put those points in there before I made the copies for you, so this is what you should have on your paper. And this, pay attention to this right here. We have 3 points, but we need 4 vertices, which means we need 4 corners because we're talking about a square ABCD. So if you're going to make a square, we have to figure out at which location, which one of these answer choices on the coordinate grid could point D be located. So that means that we have point A, B, and C, and we need to know where point D is going to be in order for us to make that square right there. So if I graph this point 8, 2, that means if I start at the origin and I moved 8 units to the right, then I have to write the elevator up 2, which means the point's going to be right there. So that would be point D. And it looks like that's going to make a square because all the sides are 5 units long at that point, which is the definition of a square. So it looks like A is going to be my answer choice. Let's go through the other points to make sure that that's not the case. If I look at B, B is at 5, 1. So 5 units to the right, 1 unit up, I would put a dot right there. If I put a dot right there and I put them together, I would end up with something that looks like this. And that does not look like a square. So definitely not going to be answer choice B. If you look at C, C is at the origin, 0, 0. So if I put those together and I connect them, it's going to look something like this. Weird. Not a square, definitely. So if you do the last one, 10, 10, 10 units to the right and 10 units up is way up here at the corner, which means I would connect the points and it looks something like that. That would not be a square either. So obviously, oops, let's see how I do that. Okay, so obviously the only answer choice that worked was this one right there, which that would be point D, and that was the very first one. So answer choice A is the correct answer for number 6. Now here's the tricky one, the one that a lot of people had trouble with it because you didn't understand the patterns maybe very well, but all they give you is the equation. They tell you everything that you need in this problem. There was one thing that you needed to change, which was the number for y. I told you this in the class, so the 0 needs to change to a 3.5 so that this rule that they give you works. So the rule that they give you here is y is equal to x plus 3.5. So if you have that, that means that whatever your x value is, you're just going to add 3.5, and they give you all of the x values. They give you the x value for 0, they give you the x value of 1, the x value is 2, the x value is 3, and now the x value is 4. So each and every one of those numbers, all you have to do is just add 3.5, and that will give you the y value. Notice that if you add 0 plus 3.5, you get 3.5. Well, what happens if you add 1 plus 3.5? Notice that 3.5 is a decimal, and 1 is a whole number. So make sure you please line up those decimals correctly, and then you put the 1 in front of the decimal point. Fill in a 0 if you need to, so that your decimals are lined up, and then add correctly. So you'll end up with 4.5 for the y coordinate. Do the same thing for number 2. 3.5 plus 2, and you end up with 5.5. That's what you get when you end up adding 2 plus 3.5. Do the same thing for 3. You're going to add 3.5 to the 3 to get your y value. 3.5, if you line it up correctly with the 0 behind 3, behind the decimal on the whole number 3, then you can end up with the right answer, which is 6.5. And finally 4 plus 3.5, you'll end up with 7.5. So my answer would be 7.5. So every one of these numbers, all we did was just added 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Whatever the x value is, all you're doing is adding 3.5, because this right there is what told you that rule is what you have to follow. You just have to add that every single time. So if you have an equation like that, what you do is follow it every single time, and that will give you your missing values for y. So that's it. That's the whole review. If you watch this video, I'm pretty sure you're going to do a really good job tomorrow on the test. So hopefully you have written all this down, and if I went too fast, just pause me, rewind me, do whatever you need to do so you can watch this video as many times as you need to and do a good grade tomorrow on the test. All right, I hope this helps. See you tomorrow.